The sound of crystal glasses clinking and pretentious laughter drifted up from my restaurant's private dining room. I stood at the top of the stairs, frozen. As my mother-in-law Judy's voice cut through the din like a serrated knife. Of course, I never pay here, it's my daughter-in-law's place. And family privilege means everything is on the house. I practically own half of it anyway. Considering how much we helped them get started, my fingers tightened around the stack of invoices I'd been reviewing. The lies rolled off her tongue so smoothly, each one a perfectly crafted poison dart aimed at my reputation. I'm Elena, and this restaurant, every brick, every pan, every carefully crafted recipe is mine, built from 17 years of 12-hour shifts and burned fingers. Not a single dime from the Lancaster family fortune. Margaret, darling. You must tell us how you convinced her to use that divine truffle supplier, one of her society friends, cooed. Oh, I simply insisted. The poor dear needed quite a bit of guidance in the beginning, still does, really. The invoice paper crumpled in my grip. Below, their laughter swelled again, accompanied by the distinctive pop of another champagne bottle, my most expensive vintage. No doubt. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Mom says she's entertaining some friends at the restaurant. Hope that's okay. Hope that's okay. Like I was some teenager asking permission to borrow the car. Not a business owner being robbed blind by his mother. I started down the stairs, my heels clicking against each step with military precision. The sounds from the private dining room grew louder. Judy holding court with her usual theatrical flair, dispensing my wine and my food like party favors while spreading lies about my competence. My hand rested on the door handle. Through the frosted glass, I could see their silhouettes, 6 women, all gesturing with wine glasses, all hanging on Judy's every word. For 3 years, I'd swallowed my pride, played the dutiful daughter-in-law, let her sweep through my restaurant like she owned it, and really, Judy's voice carried clearly now. It's fortunate I'm here to maintain standards. Left to her own devices, I pushed the door open. The conversation stuttered to a halt as heads turned toward me. Judy's perfectly painted smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened to chips of ice. Elena, darling, I was just telling everyone about our little restaurant. Our little restaurant. Something snapped inside me, quiet but final, like a violin string pulled too tight. Actually, Judy, I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest, I think it's time we discussed exactly whose restaurant this is. The silence stretched like taffy. Judy's friends exchanged glances, their champagne flutes suddenly fascinating. I could smell the fear beneath their expensive perfume, the collective terror of witnessing a family drama unfold in their sacred social space. Elena, Judy's voice carried that patronizing tone I'd learned to hate. You're being dramatic. We're simply enjoying a lovely afternoon. At my expense, I stepped fully into the room, my gaze sweeping over the remnants of their feast. 3 bottles of my 2018 Barolo, $150 each. The Acedric Caviar, $200 a serving. The Wagyu Carpaccio I reserve for special occasions. Well, this is a special occasion. One of her friends tittered nervously. Is it? I turned to her, a woman I'd never seen before in my life. And what occasion would that be? The woman's mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. Judy stepped forward, her armor of social grace intact but showing hairline cracks. Elena, darling, there's no need to embarrass our guests with talk of money. It's so common. The word hit like a slap. I thought of my grandmother's hands, teaching me to roll masa at 4 years old, of my mother, working double shifts at the hotel so I could attend culinary school, of every burn, every cut, every sleepless night that built this place from nothing but stubborn dreams and borrowed hope. You're right, I said quietly. Let's talk about something else. Like how you've been booking private events without consulting me. How you've been telling people you co-own Salt and Sage. How you've been running a tab in my name for 3 months. The color drained from Judy's face, but her smile remained frozen in place. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, I interrupted, is thinking I wouldn't notice. $3,000 in unauthorized charges, events I never approved. A health inspection certificate with a date that doesn't exist in our records. One of her friends, a rail-thin woman with surgical cheekbones, gasped audibly. The others began gathering their purses with the practiced efficiency of socialites fleeing scandal. Ladies, Judy said smoothly, perhaps we should continue this lovely afternoon at the club. They scattered like expensive birds, all air kisses and murmured excuses. Within minutes, only Judy and I remained in the wreckage of her performance. "You've humiliated me," she said, her mask finally slipping to reveal the venom beneath. "I've told the truth." "The truth?" Judy laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The truth is that without David's connections, without my recommendations to the right people, this place would still be a taco stand in East San Jose." The insult landed exactly where she'd aimed it, at the heart of every insecurity I'd carried since opening Salt and Sage. The fear that I didn't belong in this world of white tablecloths and wine pairings, that I was an imposter playing dress up in someone else's kitchen. But then I remembered the calluses on my palms, earned through years of prep work. I remembered the food critics who'd praised my innovation, my technique, my vision. I remembered the line of customers that wrapped around the block on opening night, not because of David's connections or Judy's society friends, but because I'd spent 17 years learning to transform simple ingredients into something transcendent. "You're wrong," I said, "about all of it." Judy's eyes narrowed. "Am I? Because from where I stand, you're an ungrateful little girl who's forgotten her place. My place is behind that stove, creating something beautiful from nothing. Your place is anywhere but here." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You think you can ban me from my own son's restaurant? I think I can ban anyone who treats my business like their personal playground. We'll see about that." Judy's smile returned, sharp as a blade. "David will hear about this, and when he does, you'll discover just how much influence the Lancaster name still carries." She swept from the room, leaving behind the ruins of her elaborate performance and the lingering scent of her expensive perfume mixed with my expensive wine. I stood alone among the abandoned plates and half-empty glasses, my heart hammering against my ribs. My phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. "Elena, Mom just called, and she's upset." "What happened?" I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. "Your mother happened. Like she always does. She said you embarrassed her in front of her friends, that you made a scene over money." "I made a scene over theft." "Come on, that's $3,000, David, in one afternoon. Without permission, without payment, while telling everyone she practically owns the place." Silence stretched between us, filled with all the arguments we'd had and all the ones we'd avoided. Finally, he sighed. "She's just proud of what we've built, we." There it was again, the casual erasure of my 17 years of work, reduced to a collective achievement that somehow included his mother's meddling and his own passive observation. "What exactly have you built, David?" The question escaped before I could stop it, because I remember working doubles while you were climbing the corporate ladder. I remember developing recipes while you were playing golf with clients. I remember hiring staff, managing inventory, dealing with every crisis while you wrote checks and showed up for the grand opening photos. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Fair would be your mother paying her bills. Fair would be her not spreading lies about my competence. Fair would be my husband supporting me instead of making excuses for her. She's family, Elena. So am I, or I used to be." I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline and something else, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. For too long, I'd allowed myself to be erased from my own story, reduced to a supporting character in the Lancaster family drama. Walking through the empty dining room, I ran my fingers along the edge of each tables I'd chosen, arranged, worried over. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced above surfaces I'd cleaned with my own hands. This place was mine in ways that had nothing to do with paperwork or deeds. It lived in my muscle memory, in the recipes I'd perfected through trial and error, in the relationships I'd built with suppliers and staff. But as I climbed the stairs to my office, Judy's parting words echoed in my mind. "You'll discover just how much influence the Lancaster name still carries." There had been something in her voice, a confidence that went beyond mere family loyalty. Something that suggested she knew exactly how much power she wielded and wasn't afraid to use it. I opened my laptop and pulled up the restaurant's booking system, my heart sinking as I scrolled through the calendar. 3 more private events, all scheduled under Judy's name, all marked as family function, no charge, all for dates when I'd planned to be out of town, visiting my sister in Los Angeles. She'd been planning this, not just today's performance, but a systematic takeover of my restaurant's reputation and resources. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't impulsive meddling. This was calculated theft. My phone buzzed with a text from Isaiah, my sous chef. Everything okay? Heard raised voices in the private dining room. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Isaiah had been with me since the beginning, had worked his way up from prep cook to my most trusted lieutenant. He understood this place the way I did as more than just a business, but as a testament to what determination and skill could build from nothing. Need to talk. I typed back, can you stay late tonight? Of course, always. If Judy wanted a war, she'd have one, but she'd underestimated her opponent. I hadn't built Salt and Sage by backing down from fights, I'd built it by outworking, outhinking, and outlasting everyone who'd tried to tell me I didn't belong. The sun was setting over the bay, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. In a few hours, the evening service would begin, and my kitchen would come alive with the controlled chaos I'd learned to conduct like a symphony. But first, I had work to do. I opened a new document on my laptop and began typing. Incident report. Unauthorized use of restaurant facilities. It was time to start building my own paper trail. If Judy Lancaster wanted to play games with my livelihood, she'd discover that I'd learned to play by rules she'd never bothered to understand. The truth was my weapon now. And unlike her carefully crafted lies, the truth had the power to cut both ways. The truth was my weapon now. And unlike her carefully crafted lies, the truth had the power to cut both ways. The cursor blinked at me from the empty document as I sat in my office. The weight of those words settling into my chest like lead. Below, I could hear the familiar sounds of evening prep, Isaiah's voice directing the line cooks, the rhythmic chopping of knives against boards, the hiss of pans heating on the stove. My sanctuary was preparing for another service while I sat, above it all, documenting the systematic dismantling of everything I'd built. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Isaiah's head appeared around the door frame. His expression carefully neutral in that way he'd perfected over the years, the look that said he knew something was seriously wrong but wouldn't push until I was ready to talk. Kitchen's prepped for service, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Want to tell me why you look like someone just told you the health inspector's coming back tomorrow? I turned my laptop toward him, showing the booking system. Look at these entries, tell me what you see. Isaiah leaned forward, his dark eyes scanning the screen. He'd been my sous chef for 6 years. Had worked his way up from prep cook through pure talent and relentless dedication. More than that, he understood this place the way I did as something sacred, built through sacrifice and sustained by integrity. Private events, he said slowly, all marked as family functions. All comped. His frown deepened as he scrolled. Elena, these dates, weren't you supposed to be in LA for 3 of these? Exactly, and I never approved any of them. Isaiah sat back, understanding dawning in his expression. Your mother-in-law. She's been using the restaurant like her personal country club. Today was just the performance I happened to witness. Shit, Isaiah ran a hand over his close-cropped hair. How long has this been going on? I pulled up the financial records, my stomach churning as the numbers painted their damning picture. According to this, 3 months, maybe longer. Look at the inventory discrepancies. We spent the next hour digging through digital receipts and supplier invoices. Isaiah's background in restaurant management learned through night classes, while working doubles made him invaluable for spotting inconsistencies I might have missed. Here, he said, pointing to a line item, 50 pounds of king crab legs, ordered for a Wednesday lunch service. Since when do we serve crab during lunch? And look at the date, that's when she had that book club meeting here. I cross-referenced the date with my phone's photo gallery. There it was, a picture I'd taken while in LA with my sister. Time-stamped exactly when those crab legs were being served to Judy's friends. And this, Isaiah continued, his voice growing harder with each discovery. Premium steak flight for 12 people, Wagyu beef supplement charges. Jesus, Elena. She ordered the omakase tasting menu for 8 people. On a day we were supposedly closed for maintenance. The evidence mounted like stones in my chest. Each falsified invoice, each unauthorized purchase, each lie about family privilege adding weight to a growing certainty that this went far beyond casual mooching. There's more. Isaiah's voice had gone quiet, the way it did when he was about to deliver particularly bad news. Remember that health inspection 2 weeks ago? The one where we supposedly got a perfect score? I nodded. David had been so proud, had called his mother immediately to share the good news. She'd insisted on celebrating with champagne, my champagne. Of course, I never saw the actual report. Isaiah said. Did you? No. Judy said she'd handle filing it since she happened to be here when the inspector came. The realization hit me like cold water. You think I think your mother-in-law has been playing a much longer game than either of us realized. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Can we talk? Mom's really upset about today. I showed Isaiah the message. He snorted. Mom's upset. How about wife discovered thousands of dollars in theft? But sure, let's worry about Mom's feelings. The bitterness in his voice surprised me. Isaiah had always been diplomatic about family drama. Understanding that kitchen dynamics required careful navigation of personal relationships. You don't like David, I said. It wasn't a question. I don't like watching you get steamrolled by people who should have your back. Isaiah's loyalty was fierce and uncomplicated, one of the many reasons I promoted him over more experienced candidates, and I really don't like watching someone poison the reputation of a place we've all sacrificed to build. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. Monica Reyes. The name on the screen sent an unexpected jolt through my system. Surprise, mixed with something more complicated. Monica was a food critic for the Bay Area Culinary Review. But more than that, she was someone I'd tried very hard not to think about for the past 8 years. You should answer, Isaiah said. Reading my hesitation, if this is about the restaurant, I swiped to accept the call. Monica Elena. Her voice was exactly as I remembered, warm honey over steel. I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the restaurant's media contact list. Of course, what can I do for you? I was at an event this afternoon, a private tasting, at Salt and Sage. I need to ask you about it. My blood chilled. What event? A wine and small plates reception hosted by someone who introduced herself as the co-owner. Judith Lancaster. She said you developed the menu specifically for her book club. Isaiah was watching my face, and whatever he saw there made him lean forward in his chair. Monica, I said carefully, I wasn't at the restaurant this afternoon. Until after 5 p.m., I didn't develop any menu for anyone's book club. And Judith Lancaster is my mother-in-law, not my co-owner. Silence stretched between us, filled with implications I was afraid to examine. I see, Monica said finally. That's illuminating. Elena, I need to tell you something else. After I left, I wrote a brief review of the experience. Nothing formal. Just a few paragraphs from my blog about innovative small plate presentations. But when it went live this evening, it had been significantly edited. Edited how? The original focused on the food, which was excellent. By the way, your technique with the Unicrudo was inspired. But the published version spends 3 paragraphs praising Mrs. Lancaster's visionary leadership and sophisticated palate. It makes it sound like she was the creative force behind the menu. I closed my eyes, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. You didn't write those paragraphs. I absolutely did not. Someone at the publication added them after I submitted. And Elena? They added a quote attributed to you, saying that working with your mother-in-law had elevated your understanding of refined dining. I never said that. I've never even spoken to you about her before today. I know, which is why I'm calling. Someone is manipulating both our reputations, and I want to know why. Isaiah was making frantic hand gestures, clearly wanting to know what was happening. I put the call on speaker. Monica, I'm here with Isaiah Carter, my sous chef. We've been discovering some irregularities in our booking and financial systems. Would you be willing to meet with us tomorrow? I think there's more going on here than either of us realized. Absolutely. And Elena, be very careful about what you say to anyone connected to your publication contacts. If someone has enough influence to alter my review after submission, they have resources we need to take seriously. After we hung up, Isaiah and I sat in stunned silence. The evening service was hitting its stride below us. I could hear the controlled chaos of ticket calls and pan sizzles that usually soothed my soul. Tonight, it felt like background music to a nightmare. This is bigger than family drama, Isaiah said finally. Much bigger. I pulled up our media contact database, cross-referencing names with David's business connections and Judy's social circle. Look at this, 3 of our regular food bloggers, 2 wine reviewers, and the events coordinator for Bay Area Living magazine, all people who've attended Judy's family events in the past month. She's been networking, using your restaurant as her personal showcase to build influence in the food scene. And now she's using that influence to rewrite history, to make it look like she's the creative force behind Salt and Sage's success. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from Instagram. Someone had tagged the restaurant in a post. I opened it to find a photo from this afternoon's event. Judy raising a glass of my wine to her society friends. The caption reading, celebrating another successful collaboration with my dear daughter-in-law. Ellen at our restaurant, Salt and Sage. Family businesses require such careful guidance. #blessed, #family first, #Salt and Sage our restaurant, Isaiah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I think she's trying to steal more than just food and wine. I think she's trying to steal the entire business. He was quiet for a long moment, then stood up and walked to the window that overlooked the dining room below. Servers moved with practiced grace between tables full of diners enjoying food I'd created, wine I'd selected, an atmosphere I'd carefully cultivated over years of trial and error. What do you need me to do? He asked. Help me figure out how deep this goes, and help me prove it before she manages to convince everyone that Salt and Sage was her idea to begin with. Isaiah turned back to me, his expression grim but determined. You know David's going to choose her side. I know. And you know this is going to get ugly. I know that too. Good. Isaiah cracked his knuckles. A habit he developed during high-stress services. Because if she thinks she can waltz in here and steal credit for 6 years of our blood, sweat, and burns, she's about to learn what a real fight looks like. As if on cue, my phone rang again. David's name flashed on the screen, but this time, I let it go to voicemail. Whatever conversation we needed to have, it could wait until I'd armed myself with more than just righteous anger. I had work to do, evidence to gather, a reputation to protect, and somewhere in the back of my mind, Monica's voice lingered warm honey over steel, offering alliance in a war one was only beginning to understand. The past I tried to bury was rising to meet the present, and for the first time in hours, I felt something other than fear. I felt hope. Let's dig deeper, I told Isaiah. If Judy wants to play games with paper trails, let's see what story the numbers really tell. He grinned, the same expression he wore when facing down a dinner rush with 3 servers short and a broken grill. Now you're talking. Let's burn this house of cards to the ground. Let's burn this house of cards to the ground. Isaiah's words still echoed in my mind 12 hours later as I sat across from Monica Reyes in a cramped corner booth at Rosie's Diner, 3 blocks from Salt and Sage. The fluorescent lighting cast harsh shadows under her eyes, but nothing could diminish the sharp intelligence I remembered from culinary school, the same focused intensity that had made her both my greatest rival and closest confidant before everything fell apart between us. She slid a manila folder across the scarred Formica table. Original review, she said without preamble. What I actually wrote versus what was published. I opened the folder with unsteady hands. The first page was a printout from her blog. Dated yesterday evening, the headline read, Salt and Sage, a masterclass in collaborative excellence. The subtitle made my stomach turn. How Judith Lancaster's vision elevates contemporary California cuisine. I didn't write that headline, Monica said, her voice tight with controlled fury, or the subtitle, or half the damn article. I scanned the published version, each paragraph feeling like a knife twist. My unicrudo was described as a perfect example of how traditional techniques benefit from experienced guidance. The lamb tartar became an inspired collaboration between generational wisdom and youthful enthusiasm. Every dish I'd spent months perfecting was reframed as the result of Judy's mentorship. And this quote, I said, pointing to a highlighted section. Working with Judith has taught me that true artistry comes from understanding tradition before attempting innovation. Her palate is extraordinary, and her business acumen is what transformed Salt and Sage from a neighborhood spot into a destination. Complete fabrication, Monica confirmed. I've never spoken to you about her before yesterday. I flipped to the second page, Monica's original draft. The difference was staggering. Her actual review was a thoughtful analysis of my technique, praising the fearless innovation rooted in cultural authenticity and describing the afternoon as a showcase of Elena Moreno's extraordinary talent for transforming humble ingredients into transcendent experiences. No mention of Judy anywhere. How, I asked, how does someone just alter a published review? Monica's laugh was bitter. Money and connections. After our call last night, I did some digging. Turns out the managing editor of Bay Area Culinary Review plays tennis with your mother-in-law at the Pacific Heights Country Club. They've known each other for 15 years. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. She called in a favor. More than that, she's been cultivating these relationships systematically. I spent half the night making calls to other food writers. 3 different bloggers have had similar experiences over the past 2 months. Articles about Salt and Sage that were enhanced after submission to emphasize collaborative elements and family tradition. I thought about David's pride when he'd shared that first glowing review 6 weeks ago, how he'd called his mother immediately, how she'd insisted on celebrating, how I'd felt a small, shameful flutter of gratitude that maybe, finally, she was proud of what I'd built. She's been playing a long game, I said. The longest? Elena. There's more. Monica pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails. I contacted the Pacific Food and Wine Festival, you know. The one where Salt and Sage was nominated for Best New Restaurant 2 years ago. I remembered, it had been the highest honor of my career, validation that I belonged among the region's elite chefs. David had been so supportive, so proud. Even Judy had seemed impressed. They keep records of all nomination materials, Monica continued. I have a friend on the selection committee. She sent me a copy of your original application. She turned her phone toward me. The application was professional, detailed everything I'd submitted myself. But at the bottom, in the section for supporting testimonials, was a statement I'd never seen before. Read it out loud, Monica said quietly. My throat felt raw. Salt and Sage represents the perfect fusion of innovative technique and traditional guidance. As Elena's mentor and business partner, I can attest to her remarkable growth under experienced direction. This nomination reflects not just individual talent, but the power of collaborative vision. I looked up. It's signed by Judy, mentor and business partner. She's been positioning herself as your co-creator for 2 years. Elena, this isn't sudden opportunism, it's a calculated rebranding of your success story. The diner's coffee tasted like ash in my mouth. The festival committee must have thought she was part of the restaurant from the beginning. They did. I spoke to my friend this morning. She remembered being impressed by the family business angle, how refreshing it was to see multi-generational collaboration in the industry. Multi-generational. The phrase felt obscene in my mouth. She's 58 years old. Monica, she's never worked in a restaurant in her life. Her idea of cooking is reheating takeout from Whole Foods. I know. But she's convinced a lot of important people otherwise. Monica reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through my system. Part nostalgia, part something more dangerous. Elena, this goes beyond reviews and festival applications. Someone with this level of planning, this kind of systematic reputation manipulation, they're building towards something bigger. I pulled my hand back, not trusting myself to maintain composure if she kept touching me. Like what? Like ownership. Think about it. If she can establish herself as your business partner in the public record, if she can document her essential contributions to the restaurant's success, what's to stop her from making a legal claim? The thought hit me like ice water. She couldn't. The business registration, the lease, everything is in my name. Is it? Monica's expression was grim. All of it? Every contract, every agreement, every piece of paperwork from the past 3 years. I tried to remember. The lease renewal 18 months ago. David had handled most of the paperwork while I was dealing with a kitchen renovation. The supplier contracts I'd signed at home, often with David's help organizing the documents, the insurance policies, the business licenses, the partnership agreements with local farms. Oh God, I whispered. Elena, I need you to go through every single legal document connected to Salt and Sage tonight. Look for any signature that isn't yours, any clause you don't remember agreeing to, any language about partnerships or collaborative ownership. My phone buzzed. A text from David. We need to talk. Mom's threatening to call her lawyer about what happened yesterday. This has gone too far. I showed Monica the message. She read it twice, her expression darkening. She's threatening legal action because you confronted her about theft. Classic manipulation tactic. Make the victim feel like they're the aggressor. I'd seen this pattern before. Judy's ability to twist any confrontation until she became the wound. D-party, requiring protection and sympathy. Elena. Monica's voice went soft, careful. I have to ask, how much does David know? The question I'd been avoiding since yesterday crystallized in the fluorescent light. David's lack of surprise when I described the financial discrepancies, his immediate defense of his mother's actions, his handling of so much restaurant paperwork over the past year. I don't know, I admitted. But I'm starting to think I need to find out. Monica nodded grimly. Be very careful about what you tell him until you know. If he's complicit, he's not. The words came out sharper than I intended. David might be spineless when it comes to his mother, but he's not a criminal. People do surprising things when family money is involved. There's no family money involved. The Lancasters didn't invest a penny in Salt and Sage. Monica was quiet for a moment, studying my face. Are you sure about that? The question hung between us like a live wire. I thought about the early days of the restaurant, the scramble for funding, the stress of securing loans and investors. David had been so supportive, so proud. He'd helped with business plans, reviewed contracts, made connections with potential investors. Had he made connections with his mother too? I need to see every financial record from the beginning. I said, every loan document, every investment agreement, my phone rang. Isaiah's name appeared on the screen. Elena, you need to get back here now. What's wrong? We have an unannounced health inspection happening. The inspector says there were complaints about food safety violations filed this morning. My blood chilled. What kind of complaints? Temperature control issues, expired ingredients, improper food handling procedures. Isaiah's voice was tight with controlled panic. Elena, this inspector isn't Dante. It's someone I've never seen before, and she's finding problems that don't exist. I was already standing, grabbing my purse. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't let her into the wine storage room. Why not? Because I think this inspection isn't random, and I think those complaints came from someone who knows exactly how to hurt us. Monica was gathering her things too. I'm coming with you, Monica. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Her voice carried the same determined edge I remembered from culinary school, when she defended my scholarship application against professors who thought I didn't belong. Someone is trying to destroy your reputation using the media as a food journalist. That makes this my fight too. We left Rosie's diner together. Walking quickly toward Salt and Sage through the morning fog, my mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. If Judy had orchestrated a fraudulent health inspection, if she was systematically building a case for mismanagement, if David was somehow involved in the financial manipulation. Elena, Monica said as we reached the restaurant's front door, whatever we find in there, whatever's been done to your business, we're going to fix it. You built this place once. If you have to, you can build it again. I really looked at her for the first time since she'd walked back into my life yesterday. The years had sharpened her features, added lines around her eyes, but the fierce loyalty that had drawn me to her in the first place was unchanged. Thank you, I said simply. Thank me after we send your mother-in-law to prison. I pushed open the door to Salt and Sage, ready to face whatever fresh hell Judy Lancaster had unleashed on my life. But as we stepped inside, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. And that made all the difference. Thank me after we send your mother-in-law to prison. Monica's words still rang in my ears as we stepped into Salt and Sage. But the scene that greeted us drove all thoughts of retribution from my mind. A woman in a crisp white coat stood in the center of my dining room, clipboard in hand, while Isaiah hovered nearby with the expression of someone watching their life's work get dissected by a stranger. Ms. Moreno, the inspector turned toward me, her smile sharp as broken glass. I'm Inspector Patricia Valdez with the County Health Department. We received several anonymous complaints about this establishment. What kind of complaints? I kept my voice level, professional, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. Temperature control violations, expired inventory, cross-contamination in food preparation areas. She consulted her clipboard with theatrical precision. We'll need to examine your refrigeration units, storage areas, and all food handling protocols. I glanced at Isaiah, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. We both knew our kitchen was immaculate. It had to be. Salt and Sage's reputation depended on standards so high they bordered on obsessive. Of course, I said Isaiah would. You escort Inspector Valdez through the kitchen. I'll pull our temperature logs and inventory records. Actually, Valdez interrupted. I prefer to conduct inspections without restaurant staff present. Reduces the possibility of coaching. The insult landed like a slap. In 17 years of restaurant work, I'd never had an inspector question my integrity so openly. That's highly unusual. Monica said, stepping forward. I'm Monica Reyes, With Bay Area Culinary Review, would you mind if I observed? For an article about health inspection procedures, Valdez's confident demeanor flickered for just a moment. I'm sorry, but inspections are confidential until they're complete, yes. But observing the process itself is perfectly legal, unless you have something to hide. The two women stared at each other, and I realized Monica had just thrown down a gauntlet. Whatever game was being played here, she'd forced Valdez to either proceed transparently or explain why she couldn't. Fine, Valdez said through gritted teeth. But no photographs and no interference. As they headed toward the kitchen, my phone buzzed. Kira's name appeared on the screen. My restaurant manager, who handled payroll and bookkeeping during her morning shifts. Elena, thank God. Are you at the restaurant? I'm in your office and there's something you need to see immediately. I'm downstairs. What's wrong? Just come up here, and maybe bring Isaiah if he's available. I climbed the stairs to my office, each step heavy with dread. Kira sat at my desk, surrounded by papers and laptop screens, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled with stress. Payroll review, she said without preamble, pointing to the computer screen. I was reconciling last month's accounts when I found these. She turned the monitor toward me. Bank statements filled the screen, but these weren't the familiar records I reviewed monthly. These showed transfers I'd never authorized, payments to vendors I'd never heard of, consulting fees that made my stomach clench. Kira, these aren't our accounts. They are secondary business accounts opened 18 months ago. Look at the signature cards. She clicked to another tab. My throat constricted as I stared at my own signature, or what looked like my signature authorizing the opening of 3 different business accounts in Salt and Sage's name. I never signed these. I know, because I was here when you supposedly signed the paperwork for the Meridian business account. You were in Sacramento that day, remember? The James Beard Award ceremony. The memory hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so proud to be nominated, had driven to Sacramento with such hope. David had stayed behind to handle some business paperwork while I was gone. Elena, Kira's voice was gentle but urgent. Look at the transaction history. She scrolled through months of transfers, 50,000 here, 30,000 there, always labeled as consulting fees or partnership distributions. Always go into the same account, one registered under Judith Lancaster's name. How much? I whispered. $230,000 over the past 18 months. The number hit me like a tsunami. Nearly $250,000. Siphoned from my restaurant's accounts while I focused on menus and staff and the daily miracle of keeping a kitchen running smoothly. Money that should have gone toward equipment upgrades, staff bonuses, the expansion I'd been dreaming about. There's more, Kira said quietly. I found loan applications, filed under your name, using the restaurant as collateral. What loans? Business development loans, equipment financing, a line of credit for expansion purposes. She pulled up another screen. 3 different applications, all approved, all listing Judith Lancaster as business partner and co-signatory. My legs gave out. I sank into the chair across from my desk, staring at documents that painted a picture of systematic financial fraud spanning nearly 2 years. Kira, I need you to print everything. Every transaction, every document, every signature. We need physical copies. Before my phone rang, the caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something about it felt familiar. Elena, the voice, was deep, measured, with the careful diction of someone accustomed to being heard in courtrooms. This is Avery Lancaster, David's father. I almost dropped the phone. Avery, Judy's ex-husband, the retired judge who divorced her 5 years ago after what David had described as irreconcilable differences. I'd met him exactly twice. Both times at family gatherings where his presence had seemed to make everyone, especially Judy, uncomfortable. Mr. Lancaster, this is unexpected. I imagine so, Elena. I received some very disturbing paperwork from my attorney this morning. Documents that suggest my ex-wife has been using your restaurant for financial activities that require my immediate attention. What kind of documents? Loan applications listing me as a guarantor. Investment agreements suggesting I've provided backing for Salt and Sage's operations. His voice carried the weight of barely controlled fury. Elena, I want to be very clear about something. I have never invested a single dollar in your restaurant. I have never signed any documents related to your business. And I certainly never authorized anyone to use my name or credit in connection with Salt and Sage. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. She's been forging your signature, too, among other things. Elena, I need to see you immediately. There are legal implications here that go far beyond restaurant management. If Judith has been using forged documents to secure loans and transfer funds, she has. We're looking at the evidence right now. Good. Don't let anyone else see those documents until we've spoken. And Elena, don't discuss this with David until we know the full extent of his involvement. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone while Kira continued printing pages of financial fraud. Elena, she said quietly, there's something else. The health inspection happening downstairs. I have the real inspection reports from the past 6 months, all perfect scores. All signed by Dante Ruiz, so this morning's inspection is either fraudulent or based on false complaints. Kira handed me a thick stack of printed documents. Someone's building a case for mismanagement while simultaneously stealing your money. The question is whether they're working together or if one is covering for the other, I thought. About David's defensive texts, his immediate rush to protect his mother, his handling of so much restaurant paperwork over the past year, the husband I'd trusted with my dreams, my business, my future. Kira, I need you to do something for me. Go through every document David has signed or handled in the past 2 years, every contract, every agreement, every piece of paperwork he's touched. Elena, I know what you're thinking. But I have to know if David's involved, if he's been helping her. I couldn't finish the sentence. My phone buzzed with a text from Monica. Inspector is finding violations that don't exist. Someone coached her on exactly what to look for. Kitchen is clean but she's photographing non-existent problems. Another text. This one from Isaiah. This is a setup. She knew exactly where to look for violations that aren't there. And then, as if summoned by my worst fears, a text from David. Mom says you're being investigated by the health department. She's very concerned about the restaurant's reputation. Maybe we should talk about bringing in some professional management help. Professional management help. The final piece of Judy's puzzle, delivered through my own husband's words. I stood up, decision crystallizing in my chest like ice. Kira, call Dante Ruiz. Tell him there's a fraudulent inspection happening at his restaurant and we need him here now. Then call our lawyer. Elena, she's trying to steal my restaurant. Kira, through fraud, through forgery, through systematic manipulation of every system I've built. And I think my husband has been helping her do it. The words tasted like poison, but saying them aloud made them real, made them something I could fight. Downstairs, I could hear raised voices. Monica confronting the fake inspector, Isaiah defending his kitchen. The sound of my life's work being dismantled by people who'd never earned the right to touch it. But upstairs, surrounded by evidence of betrayal and theft, I felt something unexpected. Clarity. For the first time in 3 years, I knew exactly who my enemies were, and I knew exactly what I had to do to stop them. Print everything, I told Kira, every transaction, every forged document, every lie they've built the scheme on. We're going to war, and we're going to win, because Salt and Sage wasn't just my restaurant, it was my legacy, my identity. My proof that a girl from East San Jose could build something extraordinary from nothing but determination and skill. And I'd burn it to the ground before I'd let them steal it from me. And I'd burn it to the ground before I'd let them steal it from me. The words still echoed in my office as I watched Kira stack the last of the printed evidence into neat piles. 2 hours had passed since Avery's phone call, and the fraudulent health inspector had finally left, but not before issuing a preliminary citation for violations that existed only in Judy's imagination. Monica appeared in my doorway, her face grim. She's gone, but she left behind a gift. Provisional closure notice, pending full reinspection in 72 hours. I took the official-looking document, my hands surprisingly steady. How convenient, just enough time for word to spread through the food community that Salt and Sage is a health hazard. Elena, Kira said quietly, there's something else. While you were on the phone with Avery, I checked our event bookings for tonight. Judy scheduled another private event, VIP wine night, 8 guests, marked as complimentary family function. Tonight, I felt the familiar rage building, but this time it was different, colder, more focused. How long has this been on the books? 3 weeks. She scheduled it the day after you confronted her about the last event. Kira's expression was apologetic but determined. Elena, I think she's accelerating her timeline. The fake inspection, the closure threat. Now another public performance where she can play the concerned co-owner. She's forcing my hand, I realized, making me look like the problem while positioning herself as the solution. Monica sat down across from my desk. Her journalist's mind clearly working through the implications. What if we let her, what do? I mean, what if we let her have her little wine night, but this time, we're ready for her. Monica pulled out her phone. I still have contacts at the recording equipment rental place from when I was doing podcast interviews. We could wire the entire private dining room. The idea sent electricity through my chest. Record her admitting to the fraud, record her doing whatever she's planning to do tonight. If she's selling counterfeit jewelry, laundering money, or just lying about owning the restaurant, we get it all on tape. Kira leaned forward. Her business manager's brain engaging. The private dining room has its own sound system. If we could tap into that, I can handle the technical side, Monica said. The question is whether you're ready to hear whatever she says about you, your restaurant, and your marriage. I thought about David's text from earlier, his suggestion, about professional management help, about the forged signatures Kira had found, the stolen money, the systematic destruction of everything I'd built. I'm ready, I said, but I want more than just audio. I want to see exactly what she's selling to these people. The security cameras, Kira said suddenly. We upgraded the system 6 months ago. High-definition video, audio recording capability, remote access through your phone app. Can we access it without being detected? The system runs automatically, as long as we don't change any settings. No one would know we're monitoring. Kira was already pulling up the app on her tablet. Look, I can see the private dining room right now. The screen showed the elegant space I'd designed with such care cream walls, warm lighting, the antique mahogany table that had cost me 3 months of salary. In a few hours, Judy would be there again, performing ownership of something she'd never earned. There's one more thing we need, I said. Dante. Monica raised an eyebrow. The real health inspector? If Judy's building a case for mismanagement, she'll use tonight's event as evidence that I'm not properly overseeing the restaurant. But if Dante happens to drop by for a surprise inspection while she's here, brilliant, Kira breathed. She can't claim mismanagement if the real inspector finds everything perfect. I called Dante, my hands shaking slightly as I dialed. He answered on the second ring. Elena? I heard there was some trouble at Salt and Sage today. Dante, I need your help. Someone filed false complaints about my restaurant, and I think they're planning to escalate tonight. Could you possibly say no more? I'll be there at 8:30. And Elena? I've been inspecting restaurants for 12 years. I know what fraud looks like. After hanging up, I turned to Monica and Kira. So we're really doing this? Recording equipment, security cameras, surprise inspection. What could go wrong? Everything, Monica said with a grim smile. But that's what makes it interesting. By 7 p.m. we were ready. Monica had set up audio recording equipment disguised as decorative elements around the private dining room: a wine bottle with a hidden microphone, a flower arrangement concealing a digital recorder, a framed photo that was actually a tiny camera. The security system was primed and recording to multiple backup drives. I positioned myself in the kitchen, where I could monitor everything through the security app while maintaining plausible deniability. Isaiah stood beside me, his usual pre-service calm replaced by tense anticipation. Showtime, he murmured as the first guests arrived. I watched through the app as Judy swept into the private dining room. Resplendent in a dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her guests followed the same collection of society women from 3 days ago, plus a few new faces I didn't recognize. Welcome, darlings. Judy's voice came through crystal clear via the hidden microphones. Thank you for joining me at our little restaurant tonight. I have some very special things to share with you. Our little restaurant. Even knowing it was coming, the phrase still felt like a slap. Judith, this wine is absolutely divine. One guest gushed. Where did you source it? Oh, I have my connections. Being in the restaurant business, you develop relationships with the most exclusive suppliers. Judy's laugh was musical. Practiced, of course. When you're hands-on with every aspect of the operation, I gritted my teeth, watching her perform. Ownership of my relationships, my reputation, my hard-earned connections. Now, Judy continued, I mentioned I had some special items to show you tonight. Exclusive pieces that aren't available through traditional channels. She opened an elegant briefcase, revealing what looked like high-end jewelry necklaces, bracelets, rings that caught the light like captured stars. These are from a private collection, she explained, lifting a particularly stunning necklace. Estate pieces, very rare. I'm able to offer them to special friends at significant discounts because of my unique position. Monica appeared beside me in the kitchen, her face tight with concentration as she listened through wireless earbuds connected to the recording equipment. She's not just selling jewelry, Monica whispered. She's laundering money. Watch the transactions on screen. I saw Judy's guests examining pieces, asking prices, pulling out credit cards. But instead of processing the payments normally, Judy was coding each transaction through the restaurant's point-of-sale system. Just put it through as a wine tasting fee. She instructed one guest who was purchasing a bracelet, easier for tax purposes, you understand. Wine tasting fees, Isaiah muttered beside me. That's how she's been washing the stolen money, fake restaurant charges to legitimize jewelry sales. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Mom's event tonight seems to be going well. Maybe this is what the restaurant needs, more upscale private functions. The complicity in that message, the casual endorsement of his mother's theft, hit me like a physical blow. Whatever doubts I'd harbored about David's involvement evaporated. In that moment, Elena, Kira's voice crackled through my earpiece. She was monitoring from the office upstairs. The jewelry transactions are being processed through the account Judy opened with your forged signature. She's literally using your restaurant as a front for money laundering on screen. Judy was warming to her performance. Of course, running a successful restaurant requires constant vigilance. My daughter-in-law is talented, don't misunderstand. But she sometimes lacks the business acumen for the more sophisticated aspects of hospitality. The sophisticated aspects of hospitality, like fraud and money laundering. Apparently, the key, Judy continued, is knowing when to step in with guidance. Family businesses can be challenging when the younger generation doesn't fully appreciate tradition. She was reframing her crimes as family wisdom, her theft as mentorship. Dante's here, Monica whispered, checking her phone. He's coming through the back entrance. I watched through the security feed as Dante Ruiz entered through the kitchen door. His inspector's jacket and clipboard immediately recognizable. He moved with quiet authority, beginning his surprise inspection of the prep areas. Everything looks perfect back here, he said, making notes on his tablet. Mind if I check the dining areas? Of course, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. We have a private event in progress, but not a problem. I'll be discreet through the app. I watched Dante enter the main dining room, then approach the private dining room. Judy's back was to the door as she continued her sales pitch, completely unaware that her evening was about to take a dramatic turn. The important thing to remember, she was saying, is that appearances matter in this business. One negative review, one health violation, and years of work can be undone. That's why experienced oversight is so crucial. The door opened, Dante stepped inside, his presence immediately changing the room's energy. Good evening, he said politely. Dante Ruiz, County Health Inspector, routine inspection. Don't mind me. The color drained from Judy's face. Her guests looked confused, uncertain whether this was part of the evening's entertainment or a genuine interruption. Inspector, Judy said, her voice tight but controlled. This is a private family gathering. Surely, health inspections take precedence over private events, ma'am. Standard procedure. Dante was already examining the food setup, the wine service, the general cleanliness of the space. Everything looks excellent. Compliments to the chef and management. His words carried clearly through the recording equipment. Official praise for the very restaurant Judy had been subtly criticizing moments before. In fact, Dante continued, making notes on his tablet. Salt and Sage consistently maintains some of the highest standards I've seen. Ms. Moreno runs an exemplary operation. The irony was delicious. While a fraudulent inspector had tried to destroy my reputation this morning, the real inspector was publicly praising my work in front of Judy's society friends. Now, Dante said, turning his attention to the jewelry display, I'm curious about these items. Are they part of your regular retail offerings? They're personal items, Judy stammered. Just showing friends some pieces from my collection. I see. And these transactions being processed through the restaurant system? The room went dead silent. Through the app, I could see Judy's guests exchanging uncomfortable glances. suddenly aware that they'd walked into something more complicated than a wine tasting. There seems to be some confusion, Judy said, her practiced composure finally cracking. Perhaps we should, Mum, Dante interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of 12 years in enforcement. I'm going to need to see the documentation for these transactions. Processing non-restaurant sales through food service accounts requires specific licensing. That's when Judy made her fatal mistake. Instead of admitting confusion or claiming ignorance, she drew herself up to her full height and delivered the line that would seal her fate. Young man, I think you're overstepping your authority. I'm a co-owner of this establishment, and I don't appreciate your tone. The words hung in the air like smoke from a grease fire. Dante's expression didn't change, but I saw him make another note on his tablet. Co-owner? He asked quietly. That's interesting. The business license and health permits all list Elena Moreno as sole proprietor. There are partnership arrangements you wouldn't be aware of. I see. Well, I'll need to verify that with Ms. Moreno directly. In the meantime, I'm going to have to ask you to cease processing these transactions until proper documentation can be provided. Through the app, I watched Judy's carefully constructed evening collapse in real time. Her guests were gathering their purses, making excuses, fleeing the scene of what had clearly become a legal complication they wanted no part of. Within 10 minutes, the private dining room was empty except for Judy, surrounded by the remnants of her jewelry operation and the lingering smell of my expensive wine. Dante appeared in the kitchen a few minutes later, his expression grim. Elena, we need to talk. What I witnessed in there wasn't just a health code violation, it was fraud, conducted on your premises using your business systems. I nodded, feeling the weight of evidence settling around me like armor. I know, and I have everything documented. Good, because this is going to get complicated very quickly. Dante closed his tablet, his official inspection complete. For what it's worth, your restaurant is spotless. Whatever happened here this morning with that other inspector, it was complete fabrication. As Dante left, I looked around my kitchen, the space where I'd learned to transform simple ingredients into something extraordinary, where I'd built a reputation one dish at a time, where I'd proven that skill and determination could overcome any obstacle. Tomorrow, I would take everything we'd recorded tonight to Avery Lancaster and his team of lawyers. Tomorrow, I would confront David about his role in his mother's schemes. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of reclaiming my restaurant, my reputation, and my life. But tonight, I stood in my kitchen with Monica and Isaiah and Kira, my chosen family, my real partners, my true allies, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Victory. Judy Lancaster had finally overplayed her hand. And now, finally, I had the evidence to stop her. Victory. The word tasted different in the harsh fluorescent light of my office at 6 a.m. Surrounded by boxes of evidence and the remnants of last night's surveillance operation, I'd barely slept, my mind cycling through legal strategies and confrontation scenarios while my body buzzed with caffeine and righteous fury. Monica sat across from my desk, dark circles under her eyes, but her expression sharp with purpose. She'd stayed through the night, helping organize audio files and video footage into a comprehensive timeline of Judy's crimes. Avery's lawyer called, she said, hanging up her phone. Henry Morrison, former district attorney, now in private practice, specializing in white-collar crime. He'll be here at 10. And he wants to see everything. I nodded, checking my own phone for the third time in 10 minutes. Still nothing from David. Despite the increasingly urgent messages I'd left throughout the night, his silence spoke louder than any explanation could have. Elena, Monica said quietly, are you ready for what happens next? Once we hand this over to Henry, there's no going back. Judy will be arrested, probably within days. David. She let the implication hang between us. David made his choice. The moment he helped her forge those documents, the words came out steadier than I felt. I can't protect someone who's been stealing from me for 2 years. Isaiah appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray with coffee and the kind of breakfast pastries that usually made my mouth water. Today, everything tasted like sawdust. Kitchen's prepped for lunch service, he reported, settling into the chair beside Monica. But we need to talk about staff. Word's getting out about yesterday's inspection. 3 servers called in sick, and Miguel's asking if he should start looking for another job. The ripple effects. I'd been so focused on gathering evidence against Judy that I'd almost forgotten about the daily reality of running a restaurant under siege. My staff's livelihoods depended on Salt and Sage's reputation. And that reputation was crumbling while I fought to save it. Tell everyone there's a mandatory staff meeting at 2 p.m., I said. Full disclosure about what's been happening and what we're doing to fix it. Even about the family drama, especially about the family drama. They deserve to know their jobs are safe, and that the problems aren't coming from inside our team. Kira knocked on the open door, her usually perfect composure slightly frayed. Elena, Henry Morrison's here early, and he brought company Avery Lancaster and someone from the district attorney's office. My stomach dropped. DA's office, Financial Crimes Division. This is bigger than we thought. I followed Kira downstairs to the private dining room, the same space where Judy had performed her final act of fraud 12 hours earlier. Now it hosted a very different kind of gathering. Henry Morrison was exactly what I'd expected from Avery's description, silver-haired, expensively dressed, with the kind of quiet authority that came from decades in courtrooms. Avery sat beside him, his judge's bearing intact despite his retirement. The third person, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, introduced herself as Detective Sarah Chen from the DA's Financial Crimes Unit. Ms. Moreno, Henry said, rising to shake my hand. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence Avery shared with me. What you've uncovered is substantial enough to warrant criminal charges, but before we proceed, I need to understand the full scope of the fraud and your husband's involvement. I set the laptop on the table, my hand surprisingly steady as I opened the files we'd compiled. $230,000 stolen through forged signatures and fake business accounts, systematic media manipulation to establish false ownership claims, money laundering through fraudulent jewelry sales, and a coordinated campaign to damage the restaurant's reputation through fake health violations. Detective Chen leaned forward, her expression sharp with professional interest. You have documentation for all of this: video recordings, audio surveillance, bank statements, forged documents, witness testimony from a legitimate health inspector. I clicked through the files methodically. Everything is time-stamped and verified. For the next hour, I walked them through Judy's elaborate scheme, watching their expressions grow grimmer with each revelation: the forged signatures, the stolen money, the fake media reviews, the fraudulent inspection. It painted a picture of someone willing to commit multiple felonies to steal a business she'd never earned. Remarkable, Henry murmured, reviewing the audio recordings from last night. She's actually admitting to co-ownership on tape while conducting illegal transactions. The arrogance is breathtaking. The question, Detective Chen said, is whether she was acting alone or with assistance. Ms. Moreno, I need to ask directly, what is your husband's level of involvement? The question I'd been dreading. I pulled up David's text messages, the business documents he'd handled, the timeline of his knowledge about various aspects of the fraud. I don't know, I admitted, but I think it's significant. Avery's expression darkened as he reviewed the evidence of his son's complicity. The document handling alone suggests active participation. David has an MBA. Elena, he understands financial systems better than most people. There's something else, I said quietly. He's been pushing for professional management help since this started. I think he and Judy were planning to use the manufactured crisis to justify bringing in outside management, probably controlled by them. A corporate takeover disguised as family intervention. Henry said grimly, it's more sophisticated than I initially realized. Detective Chen closed her laptop. Ms. Moreno, I'm going to be direct with you. This case involves multiple felonies: wire fraud, money laundering, forgery, conspiracy. If your husband is complicit, he'll be facing significant prison time alongside his mother. The weight of those words settled over me like a shroud. Despite everything, David was still my husband. I'd built a life with him, shared dreams and struggles and small daily intimacies that had nothing to do with his mother's schemes. What happens next? I asked. We arrest Judith Lancaster. Detective Chen said, probably this afternoon. Once I've reviewed all the evidence with the DA. As for your husband, that depends partly on what he tells us when we question him. And the restaurant. The fraudulent health inspection will be formally retracted, Henry assured me. We'll also issue public statements clarifying your sole ownership and the criminal nature of NEC. Claims to the contrary, your reputation should recover quickly once the truth comes out. As they prepared to leave, Avery lingered behind, his expression heavy with something that looked like shame. Elena, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. I've known for years what Judith was capable of. It's why I divorced her. But I never imagined she'd target you. And I certainly never thought David would. He shook his head. I should have warned you. You're helping now, I said. That's what matters. There's something else. Once this is resolved, once Judith is in prison and David has faced the consequences of his actions, I want to discuss making an investment in Salt and Sage. A real investment. With proper contracts and no strings attached, you've built something extraordinary here, and you shouldn't have to rebuild it alone. The offer was generous, genuine, everything Judy's fake partnership had pretended to be, but right now, all I could think about was getting through the next few hours. Thank you, I said, but first, I need to figure out if I still have a marriage to save. Avery's expression was kind but realistic. Elena, I've seen David make excuses for his mother his entire life. He's a good man in many ways, but he's never learned to choose principle over peace. That's not something that changes easily. After they left, I sat alone in the private dining room, surrounded by the lingering evidence of Judy's final performance. In a few hours, she would be arrested, the stolen money would be recovered, my restaurant's reputation would be restored, but I would still be married to a man who'd chosen his mother's lies over my truth, who'd enabled the systematic theft of my life's work, who'd watched me struggle under false accusations while knowing exactly where they came from. My phone buzzed. Finally, a message from David. Can we meet? I think there are some things we need to discuss, some things. As if 2 years of fraud and betrayal could be reduced to casual conversation topics, I typed back, Salt and Sage, private dining room, 1 hour. It was time for the final confrontation. Time to look my husband in the eye and ask him the question that would determine whether our marriage survived the next 24 hours. Did you know what she was doing to me? And more importantly, did you help her do it? Because if the answer to either question was yes, then David Lancaster wasn't just complicit in his mother's crimes. He was complicit in the systematic destruction of the woman he'd promised to love and protect, and that was something I couldn't forgive, no matter how much I'd once loved him. The truth was coming, whether he was ready for it or not. And this time, I wouldn't be the one left scrambling to explain myself. This time, David would be the one with questions to answer. An hour later, David walked into the private dining room looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, his confidence replaced by something that looked dangerously close to panic. Elena, he began, but I held up a hand to stop him. Sit down, David. We have a lot to discuss. He took the chair across from me, the same seat Judy had occupied during so many of her performances, the same position from which she'd dispensed my wine and claimed my achievements. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I know you're angry. He started, angry. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. David, angry is what I felt when your mother gave away $3,000 worth of food and wine. This is something else entirely. I opened my laptop, the screen displaying the financial records Kira had uncovered. David's face went white as he recognized the implications. Elena, I can explain. $230,000. I said quietly, stolen from our restaurant over 18 months. Money that should have gone to staff raises, equipment upgrades, the expansion we've been planning. Money that instead went into your mother's personal accounts. I didn't know about the transfers, David said quickly. I swear, I had no idea she was. But you knew about the forged signatures. You handled the paperwork for half of these accounts. David, you were there when documents were signed, when applications were filed, when loan agreements were executed. His silence was answer enough. The health inspection yesterday, I continued. The fake one that nearly shut us down. Your mother knew exactly what violations to report because someone told her where our vulnerabilities would be. Someone with intimate knowledge of restaurant operations. Elena, please, the media manipulation, the altered reviews, the false testimonials, the systematic rewriting of my success story to include your mother as a creative partner, that required inside information about my relationships with food writers, my professional timeline, my personal achievements. David's composure was cracking. His usual smooth deflections replaced by something raw and more desperate. I never meant for it to go this far. He said finally, Mom was just supposed to help with networking, with connecting you to the right people. I thought it would be good for the restaurant, by lying about her role, by claiming ownership she never earned. She invested early on. Elena, You know she helped with some of the startup costs. Show me. I leaned forward, my voice steel. Show me one receipt, one bank transfer, one piece of documentation proving your mother invested anything in Salt and Sage. David's mouth opened and closed, the lie dying on his lips as he realized I already knew the truth. There isn't any, I said, because she never invested a penny. The only money that changed hands was the money she stole from me. Elena, you have to understand. What I understand, I interrupted, is that my husband has been helping his mother commit fraud for 2 years. What I understand is that while I worked 16-hour days to keep this place running, you were helping her drain the accounts I was killing myself to fill. It wasn't supposed to hurt you. David said desperately. She said it was just temporary, just until she could get back on her feet after the divorce settlement. She promised she'd pay it back. With what? The money she was laundering through fake jewelry sales in my restaurant. David flinched. You know about that. I know about everything, David. The forged documents, the fake business accounts, the media manipulation, the fraudulent health inspection, the systematic theft of my money and my reputation. I know about all of it because I recorded your mother admitting to it last night. I turned the laptop screen toward him, playing the audio of Judy's performance from the night before. His face crumbled as he heard his mother's voice claiming ownership of my restaurant, disparaging my abilities, conducting illegal transactions using my business systems. She's going to be arrested today, I said when the recording ended. Financial Crimes Division, multiple felony charges, and David, they're going to want to know about your level of involvement. Elena, please, you can't let them what? Hold you accountable for helping your mother steal $250,000 from your wife. David stood up suddenly, pacing to the window that overlooked the dining room where staff were preparing for lunch service. The people whose jobs depended on the restaurant he'd helped his mother nearly destroy. I can fix this, he said, turning back to me. I'll testify against her. I'll help the prosecutors. I'll make sure she pays back every penny. It's too late for that. Elena, please. I know I made mistakes, but I love you. I love this place. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did hurt me. David, you helped your mother steal from me, lie about me, nearly destroy everything I've built. And you did it while sleeping in my bed, eating at my table, accepting my love and trust. I can make it right. How? I stood up, facing him across the table that had witnessed so many of his mother's performances. How do you make right 2 years of systematic betrayal? How do you undo the damage to my reputation, my finances, my ability to trust the person who promised to protect me? David's face crumpled, and for a moment I saw the man I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable, ashamed, desperate to fix what he'd broken. But that man had made his choices, had prioritized his mother's schemes over his wife's well-being, had chosen complicity over courage again and again. I choose you, he said desperately, over her. Over everything, Elena, I choose you. You had 2 years to choose me, David. 2 years while your mother was stealing from me, lying about me, trying to steal my restaurant out from under me. And every time you chose her, my phone buzzed, a text from Detective Chen, arrest warrant signed. Moving on Judith Lancaster in 1 hour. I showed David the message. His face went gray. Elena, please, I'm filing for divorce, I said quietly. Today, and I'm asking you to leave Salt and Sage and not come back. You can't. I can, because this restaurant is mine, David. It always was. I built it with my own hands, my own recipes, my own dreams. Your mother tried to steal it, and you helped her. But it's still mine. David sank back into his chair, the fight going out of him as the full consequences of his choices finally hit home. What happens now? He asked. Now you call a lawyer. A good one. Because Detective Chen is very thorough. And the evidence against you is substantial, and us? I looked at the man I'd loved for 15 years, married for 12, built a life with through dreams and struggles and small daily intimacies. The man who'd chosen his mother's lies over my truth. Who'd enabled the systematic theft of my life's work, who'd watched me struggle under false accusations while knowing exactly where they came from. There is no us anymore, David. There's just the truth, and the consequences of running from it for so long. He left without another word, walking out of my restaurant and my life with the same passive acceptance he'd shown throughout our marriage, the same inability to fight for what mattered that had made him such a perfect accomplice to his mother's schemes. I sat alone in the private dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage and the evidence of my victory. In an hour, Judy Lancaster would be arrested, the stolen money would be recovered, my restaurant's reputation would be restored. But the cost had been everything I thought I'd built with the man I'd loved, and somehow, sitting in the space where I'd reclaimed my power and my truth, that felt exactly right. Because Salt and Sage had never been about David Lancaster or his mother's approval. It had always been about me, my vision, my skill, my refusal to accept anything less than excellence. And now, finally, it was mine again, completely, undeniably, legally mine, completely, undeniably, legally mine. The words echoed in the empty private dining room as I watched David's car disappear down the street through the window. 3 hours later, Detective Chen called to confirm what I already knew was coming. Judith Lancaster is in custody, she said, arrested at her home on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and forgery. The media is already picking up the story. The media. I closed my eyes, bracing for the storm I knew was about to break over Salt and Sage. By evening, the first articles appeared online. Prominent socialite arrested in restaurant fraud scheme. Money laundering scandal rocks Bay Area food scene. Salt and Sage owner's mother-in-law charged with multiple felonies. Each headline felt like a fresh wound, even though they told the truth. My restaurant's name was now forever linked with criminal charges, federal investigations, family drama that would entertain strangers for weeks to come. I called an emergency staff meeting for the end of dinner service. By 10 p.m., everyone had gathered in the main dining room. Servers, line cooks, dishwashers, the bartender who'd been with me since opening night. 23 people whose livelihoods depended on Salt and Sage's reputation. I need to tell you what's been happening, I began, standing before the team I'd built over 6 years of careful hiring and patient training. Some of you may have seen the news reports, and I want you to hear the truth from me. I explained it all: the theft, the fraud, the systematic attempt to steal the restaurant from under me. I told them about Judy's arrest, about David's complicity, about my decision to divorce and move forward alone. The room was silent except for a few sharp intakes of breath and Miguel's whispered "Dios mío" when I described the scale of the financial theft. The question now, I continued, is whether you want to stay and rebuild with me, or whether you need to find positions elsewhere. I'll understand either choice. And I'll provide references for anyone who decides to leave. Isaiah was the first to speak. Are we getting our jobs back to full hours? Because if that stolen money gets returned, it will. The DA's office has frozen Judy's accounts, and restitution is part of the criminal charges. Then I'm staying, he said simply. This place is worth fighting for, one by one. The others voiced their support, not everyone. 3 servers and 1 line cook gave notice that night, spooked by the negative publicity. But the core team, the people who understood what Salt and Sage really represented, chose to stay. What do we do about the reviews? Asked Sarah, my head server. Yelp is already getting hammered with people talking about the scandal. I pulled up the restaurant's Yelp page on my phone, my stomach sinking as I read the comments. 1-star reviews from people who'd never eaten here. Moral outrage from strangers who decided I must somehow be complicit in my mother-in-law's crimes. We cook, I said finally. We serve great food to people who come here in good faith, and we let our work speak for itself. The rest is just noise. But the noise was deafening. By the next morning, Salt and Sage's rating had dropped from 4.8 stars to 3.2. Reservation cancellations flooded in parties of 8 becoming parties of 4, parties of 4 becoming no-shows. The lunch crowd, usually a steady stream of local business people and food enthusiasts, dwindled to scattered tables of curiosity seekers and loyal regulars. Monica found me in the kitchen at 2 p.m., staring at the nearly empty dining room through the pass window. It's temporary, she said, settling beside me at the prep station where I was mindlessly dicing onions. Scandal tourism works both ways. Once people realize you're the victim, not the perpetrator, they'll come back, will they? I sat down, my knife, my hands shaking slightly. Or will Salt and Sage always be the restaurant where the owner's family was arrested for fraud? Elena, Monica turned me to face her, her hands firm on my shoulders. You've been cooking professionally for 17 years. You've built one of the most respected restaurants in Northern California from nothing. You think people are going to forget that because of your mother-in-law's crimes? Before I could answer, Kira burst through the kitchen doors, her phone in her hand and excitement lighting her face. Elena, You need to see this. Monica's article just went live. Monica looked sheepish. I may have been working on something to help counteract the negative coverage. I took Kira's phone, reading the headline, "The Chef Who Fought Back, Elena Moreno's Battle to Save Salt and Sage from Family Fraud." The article was thorough, professional, and devastating in its portrayal of Judy's systematic theft and manipulation. But more than that, it was a love letter to my restaurant, my techniques, my journey from line cook to acclaimed chef. "You interviewed everyone," I said, scrolling through quotes from Dante praising my food safety standards, from longtime customers describing their favorite dishes, from other local chefs expressing support and solidarity. I wanted people to understand what was really at stake, Monica said. "Not just your restaurant, but everything it represents. A woman building something extraordinary through skill and determination, only to have it nearly stolen by people who never earned the right to touch it." The article was already being shared across social media, food blogs, industry publications. My phone started buzzing with notification supportive messages from customers, interview requests from other journalists, texts from chef friends offering solidarity and assistance. "It's working," Kira said, refreshing the restaurant's social media feeds. "Look at these comments. People are pissed off on your behalf." She was right. The narrative was shifting from restaurant embroiled in scandal to talented chef victimized by family fraud. People were expressing outrage at Judy's crimes, admiration for my fight to reclaim my business, determination to support Salt and Sage through the recovery. My phone rang. Avery Lancaster's name appeared on the screen. "Elena, I hope you don't mind, but I've taken the liberty of setting up a legal defense fund to help with your recovery costs. Several of my colleagues in the legal community have expressed interest in contributing." "Avery, that's generous, but it's not charity," he interrupted, "it's justice. Judith's crimes have costs beyond the money she stole: legal fees, lost revenue, reputation management. Those costs shouldn't fall on you." By the end of the week, the defense fund had raised $30,000. Local food writers were organizing a benefit dinner. The mayor's office issued a statement supporting Salt and Sage as a valuable community asset victimized by criminal activity. 3 different cooking shows called to discuss, featuring me in episodes about overcoming adversity in the restaurant industry, but the most meaningful support came from an unexpected source. I was prepping vegetables for the evening service when Isaiah called me to the back door. "Elena, you need to see this." Outside, a line of people stretched around the block. Not protesters or gawkers, but customers. Some held flowers, others carried handwritten signs reading, "We stand with Salt and Sage and Elena deserves better." A few wore t-shirts with my restaurant's logo, merchandise I didn't even know existed. "What's happening?" I asked a woman near the front of the line. "Solidarity dinner," she said with a smile. Monica Reyes wrote on her blog that Salt and Sage needed customers, not pity, so we're here to eat. I walked the length of the line, my throat tight with emotion. Regular customers, food industry workers, people I'd never seen before but who'd read Monica's article and decided to take a stand. At the end of the line, I found Miguel's family, his wife and 3 kids, dressed in their Sunday best. "Chef Elena," his youngest daughter said, pressing a crayon drawing into my hands. It showed a stick figure in a chef's hat standing in front of a building labeled Salt and Sage. "Papa says you're fi. Ting bad guys, we want to help." Inside the restaurant, controlled chaos reigned. The kitchen hummed with the energy I'd missed during the slow week: tickets printing, pan sizzling, the synchronized dance of a team working at full capacity. Every table was full, the wait list stretching 2 hours. "Elena," Sarah called from the pass, "Table 12 wants to send compliments to the chef." They drove down from Sacramento after reading Monica's article. I looked out at the dining room, packed with people who'd chosen to support my dream rather than judge me for my family's crimes. The same dining room that had sat half-empty 3 days ago was now vibrant with conversation, laughter, the clink of glasses raised in celebration. Monica appeared beside me at the pass, her face glowing with satisfaction. "Still think people will only remember the scandal?" she asked. "How did you do this?" I gestured toward the crowded dining room. "How did you turn it around so quickly?" "I didn't do anything except tell the truth about your talent, your integrity, your fight to protect something beautiful from people who wanted to destroy it." She paused, her expression growing serious. "Elena, there's something else we need to discuss, about us." My heart skipped, but before either of us could say more, Detective Chen appeared at the kitchen door. Double quotes, Ms. Moreno. I have news about your husband. The dining room noise faded as I focused on her words. David Lancaster has agreed to cooperate fully with the prosecution in exchange for reduced charges. He'll testify against his mother and provide documentation of her financial schemes. He'll serve 2 years probation and pay a fine, but no jail time. Relief and disappointment warred in my chest. Relief that David wouldn't go to prison. Disappointment that his betrayal would cost him so little, and Judy, 15 to 20 years. Most likely, the federal charges alone carry significant penalties, and the evidence is overwhelming. Detective Chen's expression softened slightly. Ms. Moreno, I want you to know that your courage in documenting and reporting these crimes has made this prosecution possible. Many victims of family financial abuse never speak up. After she left, I stood in my kitchen surrounded by the sounds of success orders being called, pans hitting flames, my team working with the precision that came from years of training and trust. The restaurant was busier than it had been in months. My reputation was being rebuilt stronger than before, and the woman who'd tried to steal my life's work was facing decades in prison. But as I watched Monica move through the dining room, checking on customers and collecting quotes for a follow-up article, I realized the most important rebuilding was yet to come, not just Salt and Sage's reputation or my financial security, but my ability to trust, to love. To believe that the people I let into my life would choose to protect rather than exploit what I'd built. The kitchen timer chimed, calling me back to the immediate demands of service. But for the first time in months, those demands felt like joy rather than burden. I was cooking for people who'd chosen to believe in me, to support my dream, to see past the scandal to the truth underneath, and tomorrow I would begin the harder work of learning to believe in myself again, one plate, one service, one day at a time. Because Salt and Sage was more than just my restaurant now. It was proof that something beautiful could survive attempts to destroy it, and that sometimes the people who matter most are the ones who choose to stand with you when everything falls apart, and that sometimes the people who matter most are the ones who choose to stand with you when everything falls apart. 3 weeks after the Solidarity dinner, I stood in my kitchen at 5 a.m., watching the sunrise paint the bay in shades of gold and rose. The dining room was empty, peaceful in the way that only restaurants achieved in those quiet hours before service. But my mind was anything but quiet. Today marked the launch of From the Fire, a limited-time tasting menu I'd been developing as both creative outlet and statement of intent. 7 courses that told the story of destruction and renewal, each dish representing a stage of the battle I'd fought to reclaim my restaurant. You're here early, even for you. Monica's voice came from behind me, accompanied by the rich aroma of properly brewed coffee. I turned to find her carrying 2 cups, her hair still tousled from sleep. Over the past month, she'd become a fixture at Salt and Sage, ostensibly working on follow-up articles about the restaurant's recovery, but really just present, available. A steady voice of encouragement when the weight of rebuilding felt overwhelming. Couldn't sleep, I admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. Tonight feels important. It is important. But not because of the critics, or the coverage, or the redemption narrative. Monica settled beside me at the prep station, her shoulder warm against mine. It's important because you're cooking from your heart again, not just your technique. She was right. The past month had been about survival, maintaining service, managing staff, dealing with the endless legal and financial complications of Judy's crimes. But From the Fire was different. It was personal, creative, a declaration that I was more than just a victim of someone else's greed. Tell me about the menu again, Monica said. I pulled out my notebook, pages filled with sketches and recipe iterations. 7 courses. It starts with ashes, a deconstructed Caesar salad with charred romaine and blackened croutons, representing what was left after the destruction. Dramatic. Wait until you hear the rest. Course 2 is smoke signals, house-cured salmon with smoked salt and burnt honey, about sending messages through the darkness. Course 3, I walked her through each dish, watching her face light up with understanding, the seared duck breast with bitter greens and sweet reduction, triumph emerging from struggle. The lamb shoulder slow-cooked until it fell apart, then reformed into something new. The reconstruction of identity. The dessert course, Phoenix Rising, a chocolate souffle that literally rose from flames. Tableside theater that made renewal visceral and immediate. Elena, this isn't just a menu, it's autobiography. I know. That's what scares me. Why? I set down my coffee, struggling to articulate the fear that had kept me awake. Because what if people don't understand? What if they think it's too much? Too personal too, angry. Monica's laugh was gentle but firm. Elena, you spent 2 years being told your emotions were too much. Your reactions too strong, your standards too high. Don't you dare start second-guessing yourself now. She was right, of course. But the fear remained, that vulnerability I was building into every dish. The raw honesty of cooking, not just food but feelings. Besides, Monica continued, I may have taken the liberty of ensuring tonight's crowd will appreciate the artistic statement. What do you mean? Her grin was mischievous. I invited a few friends, food writers, yes, but also people who understand what it means to rebuild something beautiful from wreckage. Before I could ask for details, Isaiah arrived for prep, followed by the morning kitchen crew. The space transformed from quiet sanctuary to controlled chaos, the familiar symphony of knives on boards. Pans heating, mise en place being assembled. With surgical precision. Big night, Isaiah said, reviewing the prep list. You ready for this? I have to be. Elena. He stopped chopping, looking at me directly. I've been cooking with you for 6 years. I've seen you handle health inspectors, difficult customers, equipment failures, staff walkouts. But I've never seen you cook with this kind of fire. Whatever happens tonight, it's going to be extraordinary. By 6 p.m., the dining room was filled with an energy I hadn't felt since opening night. Monica had been strategic in her invitations. Food writers, yes, but also local chefs, restaurant owners, people who understood the industry's challenges. At table 7 sat Margaret Chen, the James Beard Award winner who'd survived her own public scandal. Table 12 hosted Anthony Rodriguez, whose restaurant had burned down and been rebuilt twice. This feels like a family reunion, Sarah observed, reviewing the seating chart. But for people who've fought their way back from disasters, that was Monica's doing, I said, watching her move through the dining room with easy confidence. She understands narrative. The first course went out. At 7:30 sharp, I watched through the pass as diners encountered ashes. The dramatic presentation of destruction transformed into something elegant, edible, meaningful. Conversations quieted as people tasted. Understood, connected the food to the story. Chef, called Marcus, my newest line cook, a young culinary school graduate I'd hired to replace one of the servers who'd left during the scandal. The critic from San Francisco magazine wants to send compliments. She says course 1 made her cry. Good tears or bad tears? I wondered, but decided it didn't matter. Emotion was the point. Course 2, 3, 4 each dish building on the last, telling the story of destruction, survival, and renewal through flavor and technique. I found myself cooking with an intensity I hadn't felt in years, pouring everything into each plate. Grief over my broken marriage, rage at the betrayal, pride in my survival, hope for what came next. Elena. Kira appeared at the pass, her expression carefully neutral. David's here. My hand stilled on the plate I was garnishing. What? He's asking to speak with you, says he won't leave until you do. I looked around, the kitchen service in full swing, my team depending on me, critics and supporters waiting for the final courses of my comeback story. The last thing I needed was David's drama interrupting the most important night of my professional recovery. Tell him to make a reservation like everyone else, I said. If he wants to eat here, he can pay full price and wait his turn. Elena. No, I turned to face Kira fully. This is my restaurant. This is my night. And David Lancaster lost the right to special consideration when he helped his mother steal from me. If he has something to say, he can say it when I'm not in the middle of proving that Salt and Sage is stronger than his family's crimes. Kira nodded and disappeared through the pass. I could see her speaking to David, who stood near the host station looking haggard and desperate. Part of me, the part that had loved him for 15 years, wanted to go to him, to hear whatever apology or explanation he'd prepared. But the stronger part, the part that had fought to reclaim my life and my restaurant, stayed focused on the plates in front of me. Behind you, chef, Isaiah said, carrying the lamb course to the pass. David's leaving. I watched through the window as my estranged husband walked away from Salt and Sage. Probably for the last time. There should have been sadness, regret, some sense of loss for what we'd shared. Instead, I felt relief, clean. Pure relief that the last connection to the people who'd tried to destroy me was finally severed. How's the lamb looking? I asked Isaiah. Perfect, just like everything else tonight. The final courses went out in a blur of focused intensity, the rebuilt identity of the lamb shoulder. The sweet victory of the dessert course, the literal phoenix rising from flames as servers ignited the soulful tableside. Applause broke out at several tables, something I'd never experienced during a regular service. By 10 p.m. the last plate had been cleared, the last compliment received, the last critic satisfied. The dining room buzzed with the kind of energy that only came from witnessing something special, not just a meal, but a statement, a story, a declaration that some things couldn't be destroyed by others' greed and betrayal. Monica found me in the kitchen as I was finally eating my own version of the tasting menu, chef's privilege, tasting the dishes I'd been too focused to sample during service. "So," she said, settling beside me with her own plate, "how does it feel to be brilliant?" "Exhausting," I said honestly, "but good, really good." The critic from Chronicle wants to do a feature story. Food and Wine is interested in a profile. And Margaret Chen asked if you'd consider collaborating on a cookbook about cooking through adversity. The opportunities that had seemed impossible just months ago were suddenly within reach. But they felt different now, not desperate grabs for validation, but natural extensions of work I was proud of. "Monica," I said quietly, "there's something I need to ask you." "Ask away." "All of this, the articles, the support, the connections you've made for me, is it just professional solidarity, or is there something else?" She set down her fork, meeting my eyes directly. "Elena Maria Moreno, I've been in love with you since culinary school. Losing you to David was the biggest regret of my life, and watching you fight to save everything you'd built, it reminded me why I fell for you in the first place." The confession hung between us, honest and vulnerable and completely without pretense. "I'm getting divorced," I said. "I know. I'm still processing a lot of betrayal and trauma. I know that too, and I'm scared of trusting someone new with something this important to me." Monica reached across to take my hand. "Then don't trust me with everything at once. Trust me with tonight. Trust me with tomorrow's conversation. Trust me with whatever feels manageable. And we'll build from there." It was exactly what I needed to hear, not pressure or promises, but patience, the space to heal at my own pace, with someone who understood both my professional passion and personal wounds. "I'd like that," I said. "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." Later, after the staff had cleaned and left, after the final critics had filed their stories, after the last customer had praised the evening's extraordinary experience, Monica and I sat in the empty dining room, sharing a bottle of wine and talking about everything except the obvious. My phone buzzed with notifications, 5-star reviews already appearing online, social media posts praising the evening, reservation requests for the next month flooding. The booking system, Salt and Sage, wasn't just surviving anymore. It was thriving. "Elena," Monica said, refilling our glasses, "I have something to tell you. The critic from James Beard Foundation was here tonight. Undercover at table 15." My heart stopped. "You're joking." She loved everything, especially the narrative structure of the menu, the way you made the food tell a story about resilience and creativity triumphing over adversity. The James Beard Foundation, the highest honor in American cuisine, recognition I'd dreamed of since culinary school but never dared believe possible. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means Salt and Sage is officially back. Better than back, you're innovating, creating something entirely new. You're not just recovering from Judy's crimes, Elena. You're using them as raw material for art." I looked around the dining room that had witnessed so much: Judy's elaborate performances, David's betrayals, my confrontations with lies and theft, tonight's triumphant declaration of survival. Tomorrow, there would be new challenges, new opportunities, new decisions about the direction of my restaurant and my life. But tonight, sitting with Monica in the space I'd fought so hard to protect, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the false peace of avoiding conflict, but the genuine peace that came from knowing exactly who I was and what I'd built, from surrounding myself with people who chose to support rather than exploit my dreams, from finally being free to cook not just with technique, but with truth. What happens next? I asked Monica. "Whatever you want," she said simply. "You're the chef, you write the menu." And for the first time in years, that felt like a gift rather than a burden, because I knew exactly what I wanted to create next. 2 months after From the Fire launched, I woke to my phone Buzzing with notifications at 5:47 a.m., still half asleep, I reached for it, expecting the usual morning emails from suppliers or staff scheduling requests. Instead, I found texts from Isaiah, Kira, Monica, even my sister in Los Angeles, all variations of the same message. Have you seen Chronicle yet? I stumbled to my laptop, pulled up the San Francisco Chronicle's website, and nearly dropped my coffee. The headline read, Salt and Sage's Elena Moreno, the chef who turned betrayal into art. But it was the subheading that made my breath catch. From personal tragedy to James Beard recognition. How one woman rebuilt an empire from the ashes of family fraud. James Beard recognition. The article, written by Chronicle food critic Jessica Wong, was everything I'd hoped for but never dared expect. She described From the Fire as a masterclass in vulnerability made edible, praised my unflinching honesty transformed into culinary poetry, and concluded with words that made my hands shake. Elena Moreno has achieved something rare in contemporary cuisine. She has made personal pain universal. Through the transformative power of extraordinary food, Salt and Sage is no longer just a restaurant. It's a testament to the possibility of renewal. My phone rang. Monica's name appeared on the screen. Did you read it? She asked without preamble, her excitement crackling through the speaker. I'm reading it now. Monica, is this really happening? It's happening. And Elena, Jessica Wong never writes reviews like this. She's notoriously hard to please, especially when it comes to what she calls emotional cuisine. This isn't just a good review, it's a career-defining piece. I scrolled through the rest of the article, my chest tight with disbelief and gratitude. Wong had eaten at Salt and Sage 3 times over the past month, apparently, sampling not just from the fire but also my regular menu items. She praised everything: technique, creativity, staff training, even the wine pairings Kira had developed to complement the tasting menu. There's more, Monica continued. Check your email. The James Beard Foundation reached out this morning. With trembling fingers, I opened my laptop, scrolling through the morning's messages until I found it. The subject line made my heart stop. James Beard Award nomination, Outstanding Chef. Outstanding Chef, not just rising chef, not regional chef, outstanding chef, the highest honor in American cuisine. I can't breathe. I told Monica, breathe later. Right now, you need to get to the restaurant. The press is calling. Reservations are flooding in. And Isaiah says 3 different cooking shows have already left messages about featuring Salt and Sage. I threw on clothes and drove to the restaurant in a daze, my mind spinning between disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. 6 months ago, I'd been fighting for my restaurant's survival, documenting theft and fraud, watching my marriage crumble under the weight of betrayal. Now I was being recognized at the highest levels of my profession. The restaurant's parking lot was already busy despite the early hour. I recognized several cars: Isaiah's beat-up Honda, Kira's efficient Prius, Monica's vintage Saab. But there were others too, including a van with television station logos that made my stomach flutter. With nervousness inside, controlled chaos reigned. Isaiah stood at the prep station fielding phone calls while simultaneously organizing the morning's mise en place. Kira sat at the bar with her laptop, managing what looked like an avalanche of reservation requests. Monica moved between them, like a conductor, coordinating interviews and managing the media attention with professional expertise. There she is, Isaiah called out, hanging up the phone, the outstanding chef nominee herself. The kitchen erupted in applause, not just from my regular staff, but from the morning prep crew, servers setting up for lunch, even Miguel's wife who'd brought breakfast pastries for everyone. The sound was warm, genuine, completely different from the polite applause critics had given From the Fire. This was family celebrating family speech. Someone called out, and suddenly everyone was looking at me expectantly. I'd given thousands of instructions in this kitchen, managed countless crises, trained dozens of cooks, but standing there, surrounded by people who'd chosen to stay through scandal and rebuild with me, I found myself speechless. I don't know what to say, I began, my voice cracking slightly. 6 months ago, I thought I might lose all of this, the restaurant, the reputation, everything we'd built together, but you stayed. You believed in what we were creating here, even when I wasn't sure I believed in it myself. Damn right we stayed, Isaiah said. This place isn't just a job, it's proof that good food and honest work can overcome anything. More applause. But I held up a hand. There was something else I needed to say. This nomination isn't just mine, it belongs to everyone. Who chopped vegetables during slow weeks, who defended our reputation when the media was brutal, who trusted that Salt and Sage was worth fighting for. We did this together, Kira echoed, raising her coffee cup, to Salt and Sage, and to Elena the chef who taught us all what it means to cook with integrity. The toast was interrupted by my phone ringing. Avery Lancaster's name appeared on the screen. Elena, his familiar judicial voice carried warmth I'd never heard before. I just saw the Chronicle. I wanted to call and tell you how proud I am of what you've accomplished. Thank you, Avery. For everything, the legal support, the financial help, believing in me when my own husband didn't. About that, his voice grew more serious. I have news about David and Judith. The divorce papers were finalized this morning. David signed without contest, no alimony claims, no business ownership disputes, no shared assets. Salt and Sage is entirely, legally, unquestionably yours, the final severing. After months of legal proceedings, depositions, and negotiations, my marriage to David Lancaster was officially over. I waited for sadness, regret, some sense of loss for the life we'd shared. Instead, I felt only relief. And Judith, I asked, sentenced yesterday, 18 years federal prison. Full restitution ordered. The judge was particularly harsh about her targeting a family member for financial fraud. Avery paused. Elena, I know this has been incredibly difficult, but I want you to know, watching you fight for your restaurant, your integrity, your right to succeed on your own terms, it's been inspiring. You've shown more courage than most people manage in a lifetime. After hanging up, I looked around the kitchen. That was legally, finally, completely mine. No forged signatures, no false partnership claims, no family members with claims to ownership they'd never earned. Just my restaurant, built with my recipes, staffed by people who'd chosen to work with me, recognized by the industry for excellence I'd achieved through skill and determination. Boss, Isaiah called from the pass. We've got our first interview request. Food Network wants to do a segment about From the Fire and your James Beard nomination. What do you think? I asked Monica, who'd been quietly managing media calls. From the corner table, I think you're ready, she said simply. You've found your voice not just as a chef, but as someone who refuses to let other people's crimes define her story. The day flew by in a blur of interviews, photo shoots, and the regular demands of lunch service, Food Network, Chronicle, TV, 3 different podcasts, a photographer from James Beard Foundation, all wanting to capture the story of Salt and Sage's resurrection and my journey from victim to nominee. But the most meaningful moment came during the dinner service, when a familiar face appeared at the pass. Dante. I called out, genuinely happy to see the health inspector who'd helped expose Judy's fraudulent violations. What brings you here tonight? Celebration dinner? He said with a grin. My wife and I wanted to experience the menu that's got everyone talking, plus, I figured I should try From the Fire before you're too famous to remember us little people. Never, I said, personally plating his tasting menu. You help save this place, Dante. You'll always have a table here. As I watched him carry the first course to his table, I realized something had shifted. For months, I'd been fighting to recover what was stolen from me: reputation, money, ownership, respect. But somewhere in that fight, I'd built something entirely new, not just a restaurant, but a community, not just a business, but a statement about what was possible when someone refused to accept defeat. Monica found me during the brief lull between dinner courses, sliding into the corner booth we'd claimed as our unofficial office space. Penny, for your thoughts, she said. I'm thinking about transformation, I said. How Judy thought she was destroying me, but really she was forcing me to become stronger than I ever knew I could be. And I'm grateful, not for what she did that was unforgivable, but for what I discovered about myself in the process of stopping her. Monica reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. Over the past 2 months, our relationship had developed with the same careful attention I gave to developing recipes, testing, adjusting, building layers of trust and intimacy that could support something lasting. Elena, she said quietly, I have something to ask you. Ask away. I've been offered a position as food editor at a new magazine launching in Los Angeles. National circulation, significant platform. The kind of career opportunity I've been working toward for 10 years. My heart sank. Congratulations, that's incredible. I turned it down. What, Monica, why would you? Because my life is here now, my work is here, documenting the incredible food scene that's developing in Northern California. My partner is here, building something extraordinary that I want to be part of. She squeezed my hand. I'm not going anywhere, Elena. This is where I belong. The confession was everything I'd hoped for but been afraid to expect, Monica choosing us. Choosing the life we were building together, over career advancement and geographic distance. Are you sure? I asked, because I don't want you to sacrifice. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm investing in what matters most. Monica's smile was soft but certain. Besides, someone needs to document your inevitable rise to culinary stardom. Might as well be someone who's been in love with you since culinary school. Later that night, after the last customer had left and the kitchen was cleaned and the staff had gone home, Monica and I sat in the empty dining room sharing a bottle of wine and planning the future. The James Beard ceremony is in 6 weeks, she said, reviewing the timeline on her laptop. Win or lose, it's going to change everything. Are you ready for that level of attention? I don't know, I said honestly. But I know I'm not afraid of it anymore. Whatever comes next, I'll handle it the same way I handled Judy's crimes, with truth, with the support of people I trust, and with absolute refusal to let anyone else define my worth. That's my girl, Monica said, leaning over to kiss me gently. My phone buzzed with a text from Isaiah. Chef, just saw the late reservations. We're booked solid for the next 3 months. Hope you're ready to be famous. I looked around the dining room that had seen so much betrayal and recovery, despair and triumph, the systematic destruction and careful rebuilding of everything I'd worked for. Tomorrow, there would be more interviews, more recognition, more opportunities than I'd ever imagined possible. But tonight, sitting with Monica in the space I'd fought so hard to protect, I felt something simpler and more profound than fame or success. I felt home. Not just in the physical space of Salt and Sage, but in the life I'd built from the wreckage of other people's crimes. A life surrounded by people who'd chosen to support rather than exploit my dreams. A life where my voice mattered, my truth was respected, and my refusal to accept anything less than excellence was seen as strength rather than stubbornness. What are you thinking about? Monica asked. Everything, I said, and nothing. Just this moment, this place, how far we've all come, how far you've come, she corrected gently. Elena, you've transformed trauma into art, betrayal into strength, near destruction into the foundation for something incredible. That's not luck or chance, that's who you are. I raised my wine glass, looking around the restaurant that was finally, completely, legally mine. To Salt and Sage, I said, and to second chances. To Salt and Sage, Monica echoed, and to Elena Moreno, outstanding chef, survivor, and the woman who proved that some things are worth fighting for. The toast echoed in the empty dining room, a promise and a celebration and a recognition that the hardest battles were behind us. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. And that made all the difference. Whatever came next, we'd face it together, and that made all the difference. 6 months later, I stood at the top of the same stairs where this journey had begun, but everything had changed. Below me, the dining room hummed with a different energy, not the tense performance of Judy's elaborate schemes, but the genuine warmth of community celebration. Tonight was roots and resilience. The culmination of everything Salt and Sage had become, not a critic's dinner or industry showcase, but a gathering for the people who'd made our recovery possible: regular customers, local suppliers, neighboring business owners. The entire network of relationships that sustained a restaurant, beyond mere transactions. You ready for this? Monica asked, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. She wore the same expression she'd had 6 months ago when encouraging me to fight back, fierce loyalty mixed with absolute confidence in my abilities. I'm ready, I said, and meant it completely. The past months had been a whirlwind of recognition and opportunity. The James Beard nomination had led to a cookbook deal, guest chef appearances, consulting opportunities that would have seemed impossible during those dark weeks when Judy's crimes first came to light. But more importantly, it had given me something I'd never expected: perspective on what really mattered. Elena, Kira's voice carried up from the host station. The Chronicle photographer is here, and Isaiah wants to show you the final plating for the community tasting. I followed Monica downstairs, my heels clicking against the same steps I'd descended that first night, filled with rage and determination to confront Judy's lies, Tonight, I walked into a space that was undeniably, completely mine, not through theft or manipulation, but through years of honest work and the support of people who'd chosen to believe in my vision. The dining room was arranged differently. Tonight, instead of formal table settings, we'd created a more casual environment: high-top tables for mingling, family-style platters for sharing. An open kitchen concept that let guests see the cooking process. The menu featured elevated versions of comfort foods from my childhood: my grandmother's mole recipe refined through professional technique, my mother's pozole reimagined with locally sourced ingredients, street tacos transformed into fine dining experiences while respecting their origins. "This is beautiful," said Margaret Chen, the James Beard winner who'd become something of a mentor over the past months. "You're not just serving food, you're sharing your story, your heritage, your journey." At table 7, I spotted Miguel, with his entire extended family, 3 generations celebrating together, his youngest daughter wearing a miniature chef's hat I'd given her. At the bar, Dante and his wife were deep in conversation with Avery Lancaster, who'd become not just a legal ally but a genuine friend. Near the kitchen pass, a group of local chefs, competitors who'd become colleagues, examined the open kitchen setup with professional appreciation. "Elena," a familiar voice called from across the room. I turned to see Dr. Sarah Martinez, my therapist, raising her glass in salute. Over the past year, she'd helped me process not just the trauma of Judy's betrayal, but the deeper work of learning to trust myself, to value my own judgment, to believe I deserved the success I'd fought so hard to achieve. "Thank you for being here," I told her when she approached. "And thank you for everything else. You did the hard work," she said simply. "I just provided a safe space for you to figure out who you really are when nobody's trying to steal your identity, who I really am." For so long, I defined myself in relation to others: David's wife, Judy's daughter-in-law, the chef who had to prove she belonged in spaces dominated by people with more privileged backgrounds. But tonight, surrounded by community I'd built through authentic relationships rather than family obligation, I knew exactly who I was. I was Elena Moreno. I was a chef who transformed personal pain into culinary art. I was a business owner who'd fought off systematic theft and emerged stronger. I was a woman who'd chosen truth over comfort, integrity over peace, authentic love over familiar dysfunction. "Ladies and gentlemen," Isaiah's voice carried through the dining room as he stepped to the makeshift podium we'd set up near the kitchen. "If I could have your attention for a moment." The conversation quieted as faces turned toward him. Isaiah commanded respect not through volume or authority, but through the quiet competence he'd demonstrated over 6 years of working beside me through every challenge. "Most of you know the story of the past year," he began, "how Salt and Sage survived an attack that could have destroyed everything Elena built. But what you might not know is that this restaurant was always about more than just business success." He gestured toward the open kitchen, where the evening's cooking team, a mix of veteran staff and newer hires, continued preparing dishes with practiced efficiency. From the beginning, Elena created something different here. Not just a workplace, but a community. Not just a restaurant, but a place where people could grow, learn, and be part of something meaningful. That's why we stayed during the difficult times. That's why we're celebrating tonight. Applause filled the room, but Isaiah held up a hand. "Elena, would you like to say something?" I walked to the podium, looking out at faces that represented the full spectrum of my journey: customers who'd supported us through scandal, staff who'd chosen loyalty over easier jobs, industry colleagues who'd offered solidarity when my reputation was under attack, Monica, whose love had helped me rebuild not just my restaurant but my ability to trust. A year ago, I thought I knew what success looked like: awards, recognition, financial security, the respect of my peers. Those things matter, and I'm grateful for all of them. But this year taught me something more important. I paused, gathering my thoughts, wanting to get this right. Success isn't just about individual achievement, it's about building something that lifts up everyone around you. It's about creating spaces where people can do their best work, share their talents, and grow into the people they're meant to become. My eyes found Monica's in the crowd, then moved to Isaiah, Kira, the entire team that had chosen to rebuild with me. Salt and Sage survived this year not because I'm some exceptional chef, but because we built a community strong enough to withstand attack. Every person in this room contributed to that strength through loyalty, through professional support, Through simply choosing to believe that honest work and authentic relationships matter more than shortcuts and manipulation, the room was completely quiet now. Even the kitchen sounds muted as the cooking team paused to listen. So tonight isn't just about celebrating Salt and Sage's recovery. It's about celebrating what we've built together, a place where food brings people together, where everyone's contribution is valued, where success is measured not just in dollars or awards, but in the positive impact we have on each other's lives. I raised my champagne glass. The same gesture Judy had made so many times while claiming credit for achievements she'd never earned. But this toast was different, genuine gratitude. Instead of performed entitlement, community celebration instead of individual aggrandizement. To all of you, for showing me what real family looks like, to second chances and new beginnings, to the truth that some things integrity, authentic relationships, work you can be proud of can't be stolen, only earned, to Salt and Sage voices called out around the room. To Elena, others added. To all of us, Isaiah shouted, raising his own glass high. The toast became a celebration, conversations resuming with increased warmth and energy. I worked the room like I always did during busy services, checking on guests, ensuring everyone felt welcomed, making personal connections that transformed customers into community members. Near the kitchen, I found Monica in conversation with Anthony Rodriguez, the chef whose restaurant had burned down and been rebuilt. They were discussing the cookbook she was helping me write, not just recipes, but the full story of building something meaningful from the ashes of destruction. Elena's story resonates with a lot of people. Anthony was saying, recovery, resilience, refusing to let other people's crimes define your future. That's not just restaurant industry inspiration, that's human inspiration. The proposal is generating incredible interest from publishers. Monica added, but Elena's been careful about choosing the right partner. She wants to work with people who understand that this isn't just a celebrity chef cookbook, it's a guide for anyone who's had to rebuild their life after betrayal. A cookbook that told the whole truth, the recipes, yes, but also the business lessons, the personal growth, the community building that had made recovery possible. Another way to transform trauma into something that could help others facing similar challenges. Elena, Kira appeared at my elbow, her tablet showing the evening's financials. I have the numbers from tonight. We served 200 guests, generated more revenue than our busiest Saturday night, and had zero waste thanks to the family-style format. But more importantly, look at these comment cards. She handed me a stack of feedback forms, filled with responses that had nothing to do with food quality or service efficiency. Thank you for creating a space where community feels real. This evening reminded me why I love living in this neighborhood. Salt and Sage isn't just a restaurant, it's proof that good people doing honest work can overcome anything. The comments captured exactly what I'd hoped to achieve, not just business success, but genuine positive impact on the people who chose to be part of our story. There's something else, Kira continued. I've been tracking our metrics since the James Beard nomination. We're not just recovered from last year's crisis, we're performing better than ever. Revenue up 30%, staff retention at 95%, customer satisfaction scores that are literally off the charts. Success built on truth rather than manipulation, community rather than exploitation, authentic relationships rather than family obligation. The kind of success that felt sustainable because it was based on values that wouldn't compromise. Under pressure, boss, Isaiah called from the kitchen pass. We're ready for the final course. The evening's culmination, a dessert I developed specifically for tonight, Sweet Beginnings. A deconstructed tres leches cake that honored my heritage, while showcasing techniques I developed through professional training. But more than technique, it represented the sweetness that was possible when someone refused to let bitterness define their future. As servers carried the dessert to each table, I noticed something that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Families were lingering, conversations were deepening, new friendships were forming across tables. The evening had become exactly what I'd envisioned, not just a meal, but a genuine community gathering that would strengthen relationships long after the last plate was cleared. Monica appeared beside me as we watched the room buzz with warmth and connection. So, she said, slipping her arm around my waist, what's next for Elena Moreno, outstanding chef nominee and resilience expert? I considered the question, looking around the dining room that had witnessed so much transformation, the cookbook project, the consulting opportunities, the second location Isaiah and I had been discussing. The marriage proposal I suspected Monica was building toward, based on subtle hints and the engagement ring catalog I'd spotted in her laptop bag. Next, I said, we keep cooking. We keep building community, we keep proving that some things are worth fighting for. That's it, that's everything, Monica laughed. The same warm sound that had drawn me to her in culinary school. That had sustained me through the darkest moments of legal battles and public scrutiny. That now promised partnership. In whatever adventures lay ahead in that case, she said, I have something to ask you. Before she could continue, Isaiah approached with the evening's final surprise, a custom chef's jacket embroidered with Elena Moreno, owner and executive chef, Salt and Sage, and, underneath, the words that had become our unofficial motto, what you see is what you taste, no hidden agendas, no manipulated narratives, no claims of ownership that hadn't been earned, just honest food, authentic relationships. And the kind of success that came from refusing to accept anything less than truth. Thank you, I told Isaiah, but I was speaking to everyone, the staff who'd stayed loyal, the customers who'd supported us, the industry colleagues who'd offered solidarity, Monica who'd chosen love over career advancement, even Avery who'd provided the legal support that made recovery possible. Thank you all, I said more loudly, raising my voice to address the entire room, for showing me what it looks like when people choose to build each other up rather than tear each other down. The evening was winding down, guests beginning to gather coats and exchange contact information, but the energy remained warm and connected. This was what I'd wanted to create from the beginning, not just a successful restaurant, but a space where food brought out the best in people, where community was more than just marketing language. As the last guests departed, and the staff began the familiar ritual of cleaning and closing, I found myself back at the top of the stairs where this journey had begun. But instead of anger and determination to confront lies, I felt peaceful anticipation for tomorrow's possibilities. Monica joined me, and together we looked down at the dining room where our team worked with the efficiency that came from shared purpose and mutual respect. Elena, Monica said quietly, I need to tell you something. Tell me I love you. Not just for surviving what Judy did to you, not just for building this incredible restaurant, but for who you are when nobody's watching, for your integrity, your refusal to compromise your values, your ability to transform pain into something beautiful. I turned to face her fully, seeing in her expression the same vulnerability I'd felt when first presenting from the fire to critics who might not understand the personal risk involved in cooking from truth rather than technique. Monica, I'm not finished. She took a breath, then continued with the courage that had made her such an effective ally throughout our recovery. I want to spend the rest of my life supporting your dreams, sharing your adventures, and proving every day that some partnerships are worth fighting for. She pulled out a small velvet box, her hand steady despite the magnitude of what she was offering. Elena Moreno, will you marry me? The proposal I'd been anticipating, but hearing it aloud made it real, immediate. A choice that would define the next chapter of my life. I thought about my first marriage built on compromise and family obligation, sustained by avoiding difficult conversations, destroyed by David's inability to choose truth over comfort. This was different. Monica had seen me at my worst, betrayed, fighting for survival, uncertain whether I could rebuild what had been stolen. She'd chosen to stay, to support, to love not the successful chef Elena, but the vulnerable woman Elena who was learning to trust herself again. Yes, I said, the word coming out clear, uncertain. Yes, absolutely yes. She slipped the ring onto my finger, a simple band with a single diamond, elegant without being ostentatious. Perfect for someone who worked with her hands and valued substance over display. Below us, Isaiah looked up from the closing checklist, saw us embracing, and broke into a grin that transformed his usually serious expression. About time, he called up. We were starting to think you two were never going to make it official, you knew. I called back, Elena, we all knew. Monica's been carrying that ring around for 2 months, asking everyone's advice about the perfect moment. The laughter that followed was warm, familial, the sound of people who'd chosen to become family celebrating another milestone in their shared story. Later, after the staff had gone home and the kitchen was clean and the dining room reset for tomorrow's service, Monica and I sat in our usual corner booth, planning our future with the same attention to detail we'd brought to rebuilding Salt and Sage. Small wedding, I said. Making notes on my phone, close friends and family only. Define family, Monica said with a smile. I looked around the restaurant that had become so much more than a business, the space where I'd learned the difference between inherited relationships and chose. And ones where I'd discovered that real success came from lifting others up rather than climbing over them. Family is Isaiah and Kira and the kitchen crew who stayed loyal through everything. Family is Avery, who chose justice over family politics. Family is Dante, who risked his professional reputation to help us expose fraud. Family is everyone who showed up tonight to celebrate not just our recovery, but our commitment to building something meaningful together. That's a lot of family, Monica observed. The best kind of problem to have. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister in Los Angeles. Saw the Chronicle article about tonight's event. So proud of everything you've built. When can I visit the famous restaurant? More family, the biological kind that had supported rather than exploited my dreams, that had celebrated my successes without trying to claim credit for them. Elena, Monica said, reaching across the table to take my hand. I have one more surprise. More surprises. I don't think my heart can take it. She pulled out an official-looking envelope. This came to my office this afternoon. I wanted to share it with you tonight. I opened the envelope, scanning the letterhead. James Beard Foundation. My heart stopped as I read the contents. Outstanding Chef Award recipient, Elena Moreno of Salt and Sage. I read the letter 3 times before the words sank in completely. Not just nominated, I'd won the highest honor in American cuisine. Recognition that my work, my techniques, my journey from line cook to acclaimed chef had been judged the best in the country. I won, I said quietly, still hardly believing it. You won. Monica confirmed. The ceremony is next month in Chicago. Black tie industry celebration, the whole thing. The James Beard Award, proof that excellence could overcome any attempt to steal or diminish it. That authentic achievement would ultimately be recognized regardless of the obstacles placed in its path. We won, I corrected, looking at Monica, then around the restaurant that had become proof of what was possible when people chose integrity over convenience, community over individual gain. All of us, outside. The fog was rolling in from the bay, soft and mysterious in the streetlights. Inside Salt and Sage, everything was ready for tomorrow. Prep work completed, dining room set, reservations confirmed for another full day of service. But more than ready for tomorrow's business. We were ready for tomorrow's possibilities, the cookbook that would help others rebuild after betrayal. The second location that would expand our community impact. The wedding that would celebrate love built on mutual respect and shared values. The continued work of proving that some things, integrity, authentic relationships, food made with love, were worth fighting for. I stood up from the booth, Monica beside me, and walked to the kitchen one more time. This space where I'd learned to transform simple ingredients into something transcendent. Where I'd built a team that chose loyalty over convenience. Where I'd discovered that my voice mattered and my truth was worth defending. Tomorrow I would start planning the acceptance speech for the James Beard ceremony. Tomorrow I would review applications for the Culinary Scholarship Fund Avery had helped me establish for young chefs from working class as backgrounds. Tomorrow I would taste new dishes, train new staff members, and continue the daily work of building something meaningful, one plate at a time. But tonight, I stood in my kitchen legally, completely, undeniably mine, and felt something I'd never experienced before in my professional life, complete peace with who I was and what I'd built. Ready to go home? Monica asked. I looked around Salt and Sage one more time, the dining room where community gathered, the kitchen where dreams became reality, the stairs where I'd first found the courage to fight back against people who tried to steal my life's work. I am home, I said, but yes, let's go to our other home and start planning our future. We walked out together, leaving the restaurant secure and ready for tomorrow's service. Outside, the fog had thickened, but inside the building behind us, everything was clear: the vision, the values, the commitment to proving that authentic success was not only possible but sustainable. At the corner, Monica paused to look back at Salt and Sage's glowing windows. Any regrets? She asked. I considered the question seriously. The pain of David's betrayal, the trauma of discovering Judy's systematic theft, the months of legal battles and public scrutiny that had nearly destroyed everything I'd worked for. None, I said. And meant it completely. Everything that happened, even the worst parts, led to this. To us, to the team we've built, to the community we've created. To me finally understanding what I'm really capable of when I stop accepting anything less than I deserve. To us, Monica agreed, taking my hand as we walked toward the future we would build together. Behind us, Salt and Sage stood ready for whatever tomorrow would bring ahead of us. The possibilities were endless, and for the first time in my life, that felt like exactly where I belonged. Let's cook, I said to Monica, using the phrase that had sustained me through every challenge, every triumph. Every moment when the only answer was to keep creating something beautiful from whatever ingredient. As life provided, let's cook, she agreed. And together, we walked into the fog, ready to transform whatever came next into something extraordinary.